Good afternoon and welcome to Developmental Psychology. This is week 8, I believe, where we are continuing our journey to understand people and their development. And this week, particularly, we are working with, well, we were looking at and reading about and thinking about children in what we'll call the middle or the late childhood years, so which is everything between 2 to 5, those play years, and the onset of puberty, which is the wall. After that, you're literally no longer a child. And so we're really looking at what I'll call the school years. And I call them the school years because it's generally in the context of school that we develop psychologically, physically, and cognitively. And so we'll see, particularly, a lot of the consideration is what exactly in elementary school, because it's the elementary school years, do we learn? What do we learn about ourselves? What do we learn about ourselves as students, as scholars, as participants in a world larger than our families? And I think those kind of the main issues there. This last week, I gave you I think a couple of videos, some questions, some things to read, and they're concerning gender. Now, this is what I will call a controversial assignment. In no way, shape, or form am I trying to politically manipulate you. This is not proselytizing. Just because I post it doesn't necessarily mean this is absolutely how I think about things. Um, but in the controversy of the presentation, it's I think, in my opinion, fairly one-sided. It's looking at things from one perspective that isn't necessarily the perspective that is, well, sorry, that is not necessarily a perspective that everybody takes. My purpose here is to get you to look at things that maybe you agree with, maybe you disagree with, and to try to understand how you feel and then why you feel that way. What do you think and why do you think that way? So we get this question of gender roles. Uh, Basically, the two sides of the issue are do are there innate values that are masculine and feminine in children when are they born that way, or is masculinity and femininity sort of taught, which is more what these videos are saying, that gender roles are definitely learned from society. Personally, I don't know. I mean, I have probably seen evidence of both. um, I have definitely seen not innate abilities, but innate personality features that correspond to what we might understand as masculine and feminine behavior. But maybe those are just arbitrary terms that we've come to apply to certain behavior. The APA has pro, has produced documentation on something called toxic masculinity, that there are certain behaviors that we now, well, not we, but the APA would consider to be, um, well, pathological behaviors associated with masculinity. It is appropriate that they put that word toxic because I wouldn't say that masculinity is toxic in and of itself. Masculine behaviors are not bad. It's maybe certain ones that we might say are toxic. Um, and maybe you wouldn't use toxic masculinity. I mean, it is somewhat of a joke among some people to say toxic masculinity because, yeah, I mean, to me, it's the same thing that we saw with homosexuality and with anything that would be ethnocentric. So, like the way we are, the way we want to think is the right way, and everybody else is mentally ill. Yeah, like there's something wrong with that. And so let's attack this issue because here we go. We're talking about what do you think? You know, in this presentation, um, I think I see two two different two different things. Khadijah, was very your answer is very very thought provoking, because you're very much, it seemed like a very much uh, promoting the idea that ideas of gender roles are learned, and it's all of that is in how children are raised, which kind of brings up that question. I think the last question of whether it's okay for a little boy, to be playing with a doll. You know, if you're a parent, would you buy your child a doll, or your male child a doll? Because a lot of people wouldn't, and then you'd have to question why and what are you thinking. Is it because you wouldn't want your child to grow up in an environment where they might be bullied? Or is it because you wouldn't want what other people would think of you? You know, they wouldn't want to have to deal with that. Kalisha had a real balanced idea of, I think you're so much a proponent of this idea that it's normal to kind of have different kinds of feelings, and all of us at some point have to come to this, um, come to a realization, this is what I like and this is who I am. And Katina, you also said that the children will eventually, in some point in their lives, decide what's important to them. I know I'm 54 years old, and there are a lot of things I like about myself, and I really don't care what other people think. I'm not trying to be hostile, but that comes from liking myself and owning my decisions and all. Um, and I've also come to a point in my life where I realize that I'm free of shoulds. Like, a lot of times we live our lives like, well, I should be this way, or I should do that, or I shouldn't do that, or whatever. And um, uh, I'm free of that. And Lacey made the point in answering her question, what she was saying about children and gender roles and all, that we as the adults it's contingent upon us to help our children grow up without those shoulds. Like, you should, if you're a little boy, you shouldn't play with a doll, or if you're a little girl, you should play with dolls, or if you're a little boy, you should play with trucks, or whatever. And I'm not sure that would be valuable. Would it be good to force our children to do something that we think they should do? Well, why do we think they should do? Are, are we afraid of what people think? Are we a bad parent if we let our little boys wear dresses? Or, okay, that was a severe, that was way out there. But you know, playing with dolls and wearing dresses are two different things. But you got to think about that, and if you have children or not, you're going to have to think about that at some point. Because what does gender mean? Do we encourage them to be who they are? Or we try to find the way to shape who they are, because that's probably a losing proposition. In any case, good thinking, good discussion. Thank you for the respect that you're showing to one another, especially with these controversial questions. You could very easily get into some nasty arguments, but you don't. So appreciate that. Anyway, and next week is spring break, so make sure you check out the syllabus so you find out what goes where and what's due when, because literally you should be having a whole week off with no work that's due. Just because this is online doesn't mean that you continue to work. You should have a week off. That's the way I look at it anyway. So make sure you know what's due and when, and have a great week. And most of all, take care of yourselves, and try to think before you act. And also, have a great week and take care. I just said that, but um, choose life, or choose kindness and compassion and caring. And I'll see you later when you get back. Have a great week.